first. What are you doing in there? Why are you in there, buddy? Huh? Why are you in there? Yeah, well, you shouldn't be in there. Yeah. Where you go? Where you go? Yeah. Yeah. Hi, Ma. You're done. Oi. Just one, Patty. Come on, Ma. Come on, Ma. How you doing, Patty? Alright. Good morning, y'all. Happy New Year. This is the first live video for 2019. Got the year. So if you're not familiar with the Morning Joe, that's what I do in the dead of winter when we're sitting in the barn and we start having our kids get born, and then you get to see the kids running around and jumping around, and it's a lot of fun. So I call it the Morning Joe because it's usually when you all are having your coffee and getting ready for work. So this Morning Joe, I actually wanted to talk to you guys about the last post that I did, which was about making your own kefir. I got so many comments and emails and messages wanting me to explain kefir more, because I guess if you're not familiar with kefir, that post was even more confusing. So while I'm milking, I'll explain to you a little bit more about kefir and what we do on the farm. But you have to be okay with the little interruptions, because while I'm talking, I actually have goats that are getting milk or are just eating. So this is the time of year when our moms-to-be are getting ready to have babies. So we go through the motion of putting them in the milk stand, even though we're not actually milking them now. They still get a little treat, so it makes them want to go in the milk stand. And we do everything except for milk them, obviously. But it's so that they get used to us handling them and touching them. And this is when we do all of our inspections and make sure that they're healthy. They don't have any weird cuts or scrapes, or we check their feet, we check their eyes, we check everything to make sure they're really healthy. And this is when we do it, because we're not milking them, and since they're in the milk stand, they have all this time for us to abuse them. And so that's what we do. Right now I have Prim in the milk stand, and she's going to have babies in about a month and a half. So she will be one of our first moms. So as soon as she's done and I get another goat, I'll start talking about kefir and how we make our kefir, and to explain it a little bit better. Are you done there, Prim? Okay, excuse me. Come on, Prim. Come on, Ma. Just one. Missy May. Just Missy May. Just Missy May. I didn't call you. How you doing, Missy May? How are you, Ma? Did you have a good night? Did you? All right. And Missy May actually is still getting milked. So she's one of the girls that makes our kefir. Well, she doesn't make our kefir. She makes the milk for our kefir. So to go further into how we make kefir. So what we do to start is we take a half gallon of our freshest goat milk. We use goat milk. You can use any milk that you want. We take a half gallon of our goat milk, and a half gallon is 2 quarts of milk. That's important because when you get your kefir culture, usually they give you culture packets that's for 1 quart of milk. So how many packets would we use for a half gallon? Huh? Are you paying attention? Yes, 2. So for those of you who are really new to all of this, culture, when I say culture, it is for the bacteria that we add to the milk that actually makes whatever we're making. So in this case, we're talking kefir culture. And that is bacteria that gets added to the milk when the milk is a certain temperature. And then what that culture does, it comes back alive. It's in a state of animated suspension when it's in the packet. And the warm milk brings it back to life. And then it eats the sugars that are in the milk. And when it's doing that, it's actually making babies. It's reproducing. And so that half gallon of milk will turn into a huge breeding ground for the kefir culture. So when I say we take a half gallon of milk and culture, what I've done is I've taken a half gallon of milk, I warm it to 76 degrees, and each kefir will give their own directions. Follow those directions, don't follow mine. I'm just telling you what we do on the farm. We warm that milk to 76 degrees, which is the temperature that our instructions gave us. Once it reaches 76 degrees, we can add our kefir culture because that is the perfect temperature for kefir to live and to multiply. So once that's done and we stir it up and we have it all suspended in the milk, then we divide that half gallon into 3 quart containers. And the reason that we do that is because you want some extra room in the top of the quart jars because it will expand and you don't want it to come up over the jars and make a mess on your counter or wherever you're doing this. So because our farmhouse is so cold, we actually have to use a proofing setting in our oven. And what that is it's a very low temperature that our oven is set to. It's actually used more for making bread dough rise. And because it wouldn't, nothing can live in our house, any bacteria at the temperature that we keep it at. So yeast, which is also a culture, can't grow and rise your bread, and neither can yogurt or kefir or any of our cheeses. If they need to expand, we have to keep that temperature at a constant. And so that's what the proofing setting in our oven does. You probably don't have to do it, especially if you're American. You more than likely have your house temperature at summer temps, which I think is crazy. But so if your kids are walking around in summer clothes in your house in the middle of winter, you don't have to worry. You can have your culture out on the counter. So when you take your half gallon with the culture added, and you add it to those 3 jars, you then keep it on your counter or wherever it's at least close to 70, between 65 and 70 degrees is ideal for the culture to grow. And you leave it for about a day, 24 hours. And you can keep checking it, and to check it, you just pick up the jar and just jiggle a little bit. You'll see if it starts thickening. And that is actually the kefir culture expanding and growing, and it's eating all of the sugars in your milk, and you are making kefir. So after 24 hours, and it all depends on your own preference. If you like a really strong kefir, you can keep it out longer. If you like a really mild kefir, you can put it away sooner. And what you do is you put it in the refrigerator. The refrigerator actually stops the growing, the multiplying of the culture. It still is eating the sugars though, because you haven't actually killed it. So you need to drink it within probably about 7 days would be the limit, although I've never tested that because it never lasts that long with us. So what we do on the farm is with our 3 jars that we made, that we have kefir, 2 of the jars go in our refrigerator, and they will be used to drink. I actually drink a whole quart of kefir every morning at this time of year. So that one last jar of kefir, you now start the process all over again. So you take another half gallon of fresh, we use goat milk, warm that to 76 degrees, and then you add the kefir culture that you just made, that whole quart jug. You pour that into the pan that's now 76 degrees, and now you have 4 quart jars of milk and culture. So now you have to let those 4 jars sit out for 24 hours again, and then you've made 4 jars of new kefir. And then you can start the process again the next day if you want to, or if you think you have way too much kefir now, put them all in the refrigerator, which they'll be fine. When you get down to 1 jar, that's when you take that out and you take another half gallon of milk, you heat it to 76 degrees, and then you add that jar of kefir to that milk, and you are making more babies. So that is how you make kefir. So most people don't know that if you are making any culture like buttermilk, yogurt, kefir, there's others that I forgot. I can't remember now. Anyway, those cultures, you don't have to buy a new packet of culture because you have the live culture already going. So basically you become a farmer for either yogurt or kefir or buttermilk, and you keep that process going. As long as you're feeding your culture, and feeding, I mean you're giving it fresh milk on a regular basis, that culture will keep on living. And so if you have a big family, this is great because you could have fresh yogurt or kefir or buttermilk on a regular basis and keep it going. And this is what people who have dairy animals do on the farm. They don't need to go and buy the cultures. They have them already, and they just keep on regenerating more culture, because as you feed them, they reproduce. So hopefully that explains it a little bit better. Some of you were actually saying that you make your own yogurt, but you didn't understand how kefir is made. It is the exact same process. You probably don't know that when you're making yogurt, you don't need to buy new yogurt culture. And a lot of times, if you buy one of those yogurt gadgets that actually set the yogurt for you, they seem to leave out that part. They give you the impression that you have to keep buying new yogurt culture, which is a little packet that you add to the milk, and then that makes yogurt. You don't have to do that. You actually have the culture already growing. If you have fresh yogurt in your refrigerator that you already made, as long as it's still fresh, you can multiply that and make more. So just some things that you should know. If you want to make sour cream, I'll go into more detail about that on our Instagram page, because we just made a fresh batch of buttermilk. Most people don't know that sour cream is actually just cream added to buttermilk. So it's the buttermilk culture that actually makes the sour cream. And it's the same for cottage cheese. If you want fresh cottage cheese, and there's no comparison to fresh, it tastes nothing like store-bought cottage cheese. Cottage cheese is just the buttermilk culture added to milk. And that's, I'll go through all of that on our Instagram page of making fresh cottage cheese on our cheese journal. So just some recaps. If you still have questions about the whole kefir thing, please leave the message down below, and I'll try to read that, and I'll try to, I can't read anything without my glasses, as you know, and I'll try to respond to that. Also, I know I'm going to get questions of where to get the kefir. If you go to any health food store, more than likely they will have the cultures that you're looking for, especially yogurt and kefir cultures. They sell them in little packets, and it's very easy to find. You can also find them on Amazon, and some people actually sell the kefir grains, which are the older kefir. So what happens if you keep making kefir, the kefir culture get closer and closer together, and they actually make a grain that looks like little rice grains, and that's the culture. And they can strain that out so that they can add it to the next kefir. So rather than you can drink the kefir culture is actually very healthy for you. It's probiotic, but you can save just the grains if you're making that kind of kefir. If you make kefir for any length of time, you'll start seeing the big grains of kefir, and they're very healthy, very good for you. So you can find the kefir grains anywhere. And if you have friends that are interested in doing this too, I tell everyone to do a sharing thing with stuff like this, because what you'll find is you'll be inundated with too much kefir, and you don't want that kefir to die. So if you give it to a friend, give them you can even give them just a pint of the kefir culture, and then they can make their own kefir, and you can keep on going. And if you have a circle of friends that are kefir fanatics like I am, you can keep that kefir in your circle and someone will be growing it. So if you happen to run out or you let your kefir get too old, you can grab another pint or quart of kefir from them, and then you can make your own. Or you can just take theirs and tell them you'll give them a fresh kefir quart when you make yours. So just some suggestions, but these are some of the ways we are changing the world one meal at a time. So happy winter and happy new year. And I love you all, and I will see you soon. Bye.